All right. Well, welcome to your July ACE Talking Stick. Thank you for joining us. I know some of you may be joining us from your summer vacation, so we appreciate you taking the time to be here today. We'll get our disclaimer out of the way. This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred. Great. So today in our ACE Talking Stick, we're going to be talking a bit about the services everybody's providing, the service providers that you're using, touch upon some implementation requirement pieces, and of course, our ever-present topic of your budgets and any budget questions and things there. And then also some exciting upcoming events that we have going on. I do want to actually, for those who are just joining, address a question that Sandy had asked kind of pre-show. You should have 2 calendar invites on your calendar for, excuse me, for today. Those are both events that you're invited to and welcome to attend. But for those who may be new joining us, I want to make sure you know the difference between the two. So the ACE Talking Stick that you're at right now, we're going to focus really in on things that solely pertain to the ACE grantees. The next Talking Stick is our demo Talking Stick, where we're going to be focused on needs assessments. And we're going to be chatting about needs assessments, any questions folks have, and some great resources. So you're always welcome to join that one as well. But that's kind of the difference between the two and why you often see 2 on your calendar. So let's jump in and have Bianca welcome you as well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining this month's Talking Stick session. This month has started off really well with our one-on-one calls. So thank you for those who've been signing up and those who've I've already met with. It's been very enlightening hearing from the grantees and just seeing where everyone's at, if they're implementing or getting ready to implement. If you have not signed up, there are still some slots left on the Calendly link that I've sent out. But I probably need to add a couple more into August. So if those times do not work, you can reach out to me to see if there's a time that we can fill in July or schedule something for August. But yes, please sign up for those. It's been super helpful. I know on my end, there's some questions that you guys been waiting on from me. So it's easy just to kind of address everything on the call. You can invite anyone else that needs to be on the call. If, your fiscal officers have questions or tribal administrators are confused about ACE, it's a great time for me to, answer their questions and provide clarity. I see in the chat the link and the request went out through G5. So that will be listed for anyone who is on their GAN as the project director. And I know some programs are a little different where if they're on the GAN, they might oversee all the federal projects and you're the actual project director. In that case, please reach out to, that person so that you can still schedule that call. And if you need to be changed to that person listed on your GAN for the project director, please send in that request as soon as possible. We do want to make sure that the right person is listed and we're not sending correspondence to, people who have left the grant. So yes, if you need to update that, we need a letter on letterhead with your contact information, your level of effort, and your resume attached, and I can, expedite that and we can, get the ball rolling. Also, just thinking about that, it is important that it's mandatory that whenever I'm talking about the grant one-on-one or through emails, that someone on that GAN is listed on that email. I cannot have calls or correspondence with people if someone who's not, liable for the grant is not listed on the call. So even if, you are like a project coordinator, if you are a project coordinator and, the project director or the certified official is a different person, at least CC them on emails to me, and they would be invited, excuse me, to the calls as well. Also, just thinking too, another reminder, please, please, please include your PR number on any correspondence, especially emails. I've worked with a lot of you for NYCP. Some of you worked on an NYCP and now on an ACE. So it's just so much more cleaner when I know exactly which grant you're talking about and I'm giving correct information. So thank you. I know that was a long introduction, but I will follow up if needed.
Great. We like long introductions, lots of good information. All right, so we will jump into our first discussion topic. So the first one, actually, we're going to launch with a little poll, change it up a little bit before we fully dive in. And so before I pop up the poll, I want to let you know, instead of typing out all of these and making you read through all that, the poll's just going to have the numbers. And so what we're going to ask is, which of these are you either currently offering, or for those who are still in planning, you plan to offer? These were the 12 categories that you would have found when you were writing your grant that are the allowable categories of services to students. So I'm going to pop that poll up and you can select as many of these as are applicable to you. That way we can see which ones folks are starting to do. If you're joining maybe from a mobile device and you aren't able to see the poll, you're also welcome to always pop that over in the chat box too. John, no, you should be able to pick all of them that apply, because most of you are definitely doing more than one category. Is it only letting you pick one? Okay, hold please. We'll just restart it. Sometimes it gets finicky. This we can fix. It's kind of like when you call IT and they always tell you, have you tried turning it off and back on? So yes, we're going to turn it off and back on. Exactly. Okay. And now we're going to try again. We'll see if it likes us better this time. All right. And whoever's quick, let me know if it lets you pick more than one, if it's participating correctly now. It must be, because more answers are coming in. Yeah, and these are just the numbers that correspond with the various options on the screen for anybody who might just be joining us. And if you have a service you're offering, you're like, I'm not exactly sure which category it fits in, you can always pop that in the chat box too. All right, I'm gonna give you about 15 more seconds to get your answers in. Share out with your peers. This is not locking you into certain services. It's just so we can share. All right. I'm going to go ahead and lock in our answers. Most of us have been able to respond. All right, so I'll share that up on the screen so you can see it as well. You can see out of the 16 folks who did the poll, a good bit of us, almost 70% doing some native language history or culture, large percentages in advanced remedial or elective courses, concurrent and dual enrollment, and let's see, books, materials, and education technology. And then our three highest, our very, very highest is number 8, which is tutoring, with 88% of you doing some tutoring. The next highest being number 9, which is our summer after school education programs and student transportation needed. So that's 81% of you. And then our third highest being 11 and or 12. So supplemental counseling services and other education related services that are reasonable and necessary. So I'm curious, because we do have such a high amount in that 11 and 12, could you share, either unmute and share with us or in the chat box, whichever you're more comfortable with, for those that mark number 12, the other education related services, what other types of things are you offering? There were at least 12 of you who marked this. I know some of it might have been the supplemental counseling, but I know some of you were other services.
I could speak to that.
Yeah, John, what else are you offering?
Well, we are paying for music lessons. We're going to be doing some art workshops. We feel that that it really will benefit the students as they address their other academic studies. That was something that we didn't really think about in our proposal or application process, but once we got into it, we felt like it was necessary.
No, those are great services. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to share what they're doing under that kind of other services piece, our more broad bucket of fun? And if you're not feeling chatty, you're always welcome to pop it in the chat box too. Another great way to share without having to unmute. All right, while you're thinking about that, what questions do you have about the services that you're allowed to offer? Are there certain categories that you might have questions about? Or are there things that you would like to know from your peers in regards to the services that they're offering? This is a great time to get any of those questions answered, whether it be by Bianca or from the other grantees.
Also, I'm curious for any of those who are implementing, what services are working really well, especially after, or not after, during a pandemic, and with the summer, and what services are really taking interest of students right now. During all this crazy, I just want to know, how kids change their minds and interests so much. Just what's, that number one interest, I guess, that you're seeing in your project.
Well, if no one else will speak, I will. We, of course, we started services April 1st, which is late in the school year for Louisiana and Texas. And so, but we had some students who were, they were sort of on the fence as whether or not they were going to actually pass or not. And so I think they saw that they needed help. And so we were able to turn some things around for some of our students. While we're very close to reaching our goal of the number of students that we were going to provide services for this year, there were still a lot of students who were approaching the end of the school year. So there's been a little bit of people dragging their feet, but our summer activities, which is the time we have more time to do things like this. We have a lot of things going on, academic enrichment, cultural enrichment, We have things going on practically every week. It's a way to, of course, get to know the students. And next week, we have a talking stick with parents and students. It's going to be a virtual event. We've broken it up into two groups, and we're going to, field questions and talk about services and get some direct input. We also have an online survey that we're going to launch pretty soon. So while not everyone has received the full, blown services so far, there's still some students who have, and some families who have experienced some of these things. So we'll get some initial input. I think the next survey we do this fall will be a lot more telling. We'll ask them to evaluate how we are providing the services, how our outside providers are doing it as well. That's kind of what's going on.
Nice, thank you.
Well, and Laura shared that.
John, on your summer activities, did they sign up individually for the activities, or do they just state, do you provide a list and they select one, or can they select multiple on your summer activities?
Well, what we did was we created this very detailed service selection form. And part of the application or registration for the program, we had the parents fill them out. Of course, we assisted them, our counselors, and we have some parent liaison who we made familiar with the form. So we've walked them through it. And so some of these, when we got into it quite a bit, we put them up on a board and we say, here are some interests that are out there. And so we went to, we had things that we developed by our department, and we had things that we outsourced to outside providers, but we were able to see enough interest in certain activities that we were able to move forward with the planning on those, or completion of planning. So I have to say that, some of the categories are kind of broad, which benefits us. And so it's like a buffet. If you say you're going to do a buffet, you have to create the product, the food and everything. And then you're going to have customers, because that's based on your service requests. So you have to move forward with developing those things, and then you go out and you publicize it, promote it, and you sign kids up. So sometimes we've had students who did not initially select the service, and if they or their parents show interest, we go back and we review the service form with them, and we add that to their selection of services.
Thanks, John. All right. And we also had Laura, if you check in your chat box, she was sharing for number 12, they're going to be doing life skills for living outside of the rural community. So things like how to balance your budget, take the bus, life on your own, how to succeed in college or a career. And they have a partner that's offering those services. And I think those are great skills. Those are things that definitely our students can benefit from, particularly as they head out into the real world. Life after K-12 education. And then we also had a question. Kayla was asking, can you expand on the types of supplemental counseling that would qualify under the grant? I know the counseling can't be medically related. So I am going to pop over. This is the nice friendly version of the 12 categories, but I also have the official wording. So I'm going to pop over to that version so you can see the exact wording on that one. Because supplemental counseling services, not to include psychiatric or medical services. So with that, the types of supplemental counseling, I know we have some folks who, they're providing counseling in regards to like post-secondary options. So whether that be college, career options, and they're providing some supplemental counseling there. Are there any other folks who are doing a different kind of counseling? Because it can be lots of different things as long as it doesn't fall under that medical psychiatric piece.
And I think also the biggest thing about that is all of these things have the supplement, not supplant clause. So everything would need to be supplementary and not already provided, definitely not federally, but by the schools or, to the students currently, at least in the same capacity that we're providing it with the grant funds. So if there's, we couldn't hire, like pay for a counselor with the grant funds that's already in the school system to service the same things, So supplementary would be like, outside of the school, maybe like Sarah was saying, if it's like a college readiness coach type of counseling or something that's completely different than that's already being provided to the student. And I wanted to, Laura, I think that's awesome with the life skills. I think there is so much too that, as you become an adult, you've gone through school, you can have straight A's and you're still just not ready for the world, so you can definitely think of like a lot of those life skill classes. Like even I'm purchasing my first home and it's like, why don't they teach this in school or a program, so if there's like a mortgage class or something, maybe I can join. But, there's so many different life skills that you really can prepare our students for their future for career in college.
And Laura pointed out a great thing that was identified by the parents and teachers in the communities, that was a real need. And then they developed something to meet that need.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know, like, ask the students, I'm sure they can come up with so many ideas, and the parents know what their children need as well too. But it's a lot of opportunity on the board. I know everyone seems so shy right now, but you guys are doing so much great work out there already, and definitely fitting in these categories.
I do have a question related to tutoring. So something we would like to provide that's similar is homework coaching. And online, I found some either like 16 or 24-hour training certification groups. And if we want to offer that as a service, homework coaching, the liaisons going through that, for example, that 16-hour training, is that something, the certification, obviously we would advertise that on the portal, but for the certification, is that something we would just keep in log? Or is that something that kind of needs to be approved beforehand before we can offer that as a service?
So unfortunately, we cannot build the capacity of our service providers. So we cannot offer any professional development for the service providers. The professional development would need to be, for like the admin staff through the grant. And then we still have that 80% of funds that need to be, directly to students. So then you still have like maybe a little wiggle room for professional development, but these funds are definitely intended more for direct services and for the students rather than developing the service providers.
So maybe my question more so, thank you, would be, is homework coaching something that we could offer without the certification then, without the professional development?
Yeah, that sounds, like a tutoring, but different terminology to me. So I definitely think that
similar, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions you have in regards to the various types of services or great services you're offering that you'd like to share out with the others?
So I had one question. I'm not really sure where it would pertain to. I'm kind of thinking it's number 3 because that's kind of how we were going to implement it.
Mhm.
But we were going to be using a strengths kind of assessment program, and we're working with our public school that we're servicing, and they're open to assessing the entire school. but it would just be the assessment itself. And then we have an apprenticeship program for 11th and 12th graders where we would use that assessment information to kind of put them into a job that's related to their strengths and their interests in the community. But one service would just be like I said, assessing the 9th through 12th graders. Would that still fall under the number 3, or would that even be considered a service? I guess that's just kind of one of my questions.
It sounds like number 3. I'm sorry, I was reading at the last part of that. Sarah, did you have any issues with what he was saying? But in the beginning, it sounded like it was like a shadowing program.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a number, like that would fit under that number 3 category as well.
Yeah, so for Ben and anyone else, if you have not, if you're listed them again and you have not received the link for the summer call check-in for the one-on-one, you can send me an email and I can provide it to you. But yeah, I'll definitely add some more dates in August too. So don't worry if you don't see a slot, it's, you won't, everyone should have one this summer for sure.
And then there was a follow-up to Sandy's question. Does the apprenticeship have to lead to an industry certification? So can they do an apprenticeship even if it's not necessarily going to get them the industry certification during that apprenticeship?
Are there any other questions?
Oh, I think maybe it cut out, Bianca. Can you hear us now?
Oh, yeah.
So Spitzer had a follow-up question to Sandy's regarding the apprenticeships. Is it allowable for them to offer an apprenticeship even if they're not going to get an industry certification during that apprenticeship?
I mean, technically, I would think any type of apprenticeship would give you skills for that, right? So it would be something that they would add to their resume, or if they end up pursuing that field, that would be, like the experience or some form. So I think that's completely fine. But I will follow up just to make sure that, because we're not asking for collections of certifications or things like that. So I would, hope that they would use those skill sets, but if they go to college or do something else, I mean, that's understood too. But yeah, I don't think that that's the key part, but I'm going to verify on if a certification is required for apprenticeship or training program, just to be safe.
So maybe I can elaborate. This is Spencer. It's a Navajo peacemaking apprenticeship that we've set up. We started a little bit with this before ACE came along, but or with the idea, I guess. So we're trying to we're looking at building that into a full apprenticeship with peacemaking, and it's more of a cultural thing. It's not necessarily, I mean, the kids, if kids decided to pursue that path in behavioral health with social work or psychology, it would benefit them that way. But it's not necessarily, I guess, recognized as an industry certification where it's a tribal thing.
Well, we still have number 1 to kind of fall in on too. You can have cultural courses, and if that's, the way of teaching or learning is by hands-on, which is my way of learning, I think that still fits into like a cultural course or component that's educational. So maybe it wouldn't be named like an apprenticeship, but I still think it's worthy of the services.
Yeah, I think your peacemaking program is basically like a combo of 1 and 3.
Yeah. Or 12.
Yeah.
Or other.
The ever-present catch-all of 12.
Right.
Well, and then Marcos was sharing that they're working on partnering with local districts to provide supplemental services for their students, and asked, are there common practices, procedures to address student information sharing, to assist with recruitment of program participants, to manage FERPA and other legal issues? And I think this is one where, after Bianca shares kind of the department view, it'd be great to hear from some of the other programs on how you manage that when you're working with school districts as well.
Yeah, so I think, especially with dealing with youth, that's why we want so much of the parent involvement, is to have that consent of anything. But we know that, we have to really be strategic and think through our measures that we're collecting to see if it's even doable because of some of these laws and preventions of privacy. So it's really, up to how you can collect it and what goals, maybe if it's like, student attendance can't be collected because this, the school's not a partner, or you just don't have access to it. Maybe you can't reach a certain goal. So maybe we do need to submit like a change of scope to, make sure that the goals that we are reaching are feasible, because we do have to protect that privacy of minors and regulations that the federal and state hold. So it is a little challenging when it comes to, collecting data to make sure we're reaching goals.
I appreciate that. Can I follow up?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. We have a great opportunity for increasing the partnership here in LA with the major district, which is LA Unified. But I think what I'd like to clarify is how we can leverage the grants source being the U.S. Department of Ed, Office of Indian Education, in terms of the justification of the programming serving the needs of the students. I think the law is pretty clear that if we have a valid educational reason, the district has the authority to share that information. But I just want to tread carefully in terms of how we represent the grant and the program and the source of funding.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think we have that big of a push because we still have to protect, certain rights, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's any way that, like, if there is someone that needs more information, they're always welcome to a call and we can, speak on what we're doing or like kind of clarify things more. Is probably the most I can do. I don't know how much we have to, like, be a force to pull information. I wish I had more power, but, I definitely can explain and know like the importance of gathering the data, but yeah, unless you can think of something, I can look more into it, but it's such a tricky, a very, very thin line between allowability and protecting privacy. So,
yeah, no, I think that'd be great. It's just verification would be great. And then just making sure that as we reference your role or the Office of Indian Education's role in funding the program and the projects, and the services ultimately that we're providing the students and meeting a critical gap, with a complete lack of service here that's been validated in so many different levels, including within the district, that they're hungry for us to partner with them. So I think there's a great opening to it. But I was just curious if there were any common practices regarding, just like there is a standard MOU for vendors, is there a standard MOU with school districts that we could maybe, benefit from?
let me look into that, because I'm pretty sure, I mean, our attorneys probably crafted something for other grants before that we probably can, adapt for ACE or, help out with the template or something, but
That'd be great.
on right now, but I'll look into that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and while I think Bianca's right, we can definitely come up with some kind of template from somewhere. I would say those definitely kind of that we've talked about are the two practices that are probably the most common amongst the grantees as far as data sharing with school districts. And that's the MOU, and really laying it out from the beginning. Because like you said, if they're hungry to partner, then they have to be hungry to actually partner. It has to be a give and take, not just them taking all the services you're offering and not being willing to give anything in return. So really setting that out in advance, that we have all these amazing things that we can offer for the students. But in order to meet our funding requirements, we're going to need XYZ, and, you know, really laying out exactly what you need and why.
Yeah.
And then the other piece, yeah, that when families are signing up, school districts do take very seriously parent permission. So being able to show that when students signed up for their services, that their families authorized that release of data will often pave that road to easy data access as well.
Yeah, as well as clarifying the limitation of liability, which is mostly what the district is most concerned with, is
Yeah.
just not being liable for anything that happens in our programs, or having some shared standard of liability. But I'm happy to report that one of the outcomes that we've had just last week was a $10 million initiative of the district set aside funds for an Indigenous student achievement initiative. And so we're hoping this will help us kind of bridge the gap from their side of things with like transportation costs or facilities costs for us to be able to actually reach students across the county, which is pretty broad, a pretty big space for us. So we're happy to say that your funding is already impacting some pretty big changes. I would say they're kind of like tectonic plate shifts in LA County.
That's awesome. Congrats.
No, thank you.
All right. Well, if anyone has more things to share or more questions, we can definitely keep talking about the services, but I'll also kind of bring up our next topic, particularly since it's very related. Last month, there was a lot of interest in talking about service providers and really sharing out the different service providers that you might be using, in particular those that might be available to use in other areas. So whether it's because it's a larger entity that has multiple offices in different areas and might be able to work in that function, or maybe it's an online service that you're utilizing and you found some great online providers. And I can actually, I'll stop sharing so we can see each other a little bit better. But does anybody have any providers that they would want to share? Again, you're welcome to pop it in the chat box, but feel free to unmute and share out any providers that you might currently be utilizing that would be of interest to others as well.
Go ahead, Ben.
Good morning, everyone. In assessing our evaluation, or during the evaluation process from the CNRA that was conducted, a lot of our families and students identified nonprofits. Mainly, I think there was only 2 profit services that were identified for Tiamona. And so that led us down a path to creatively think and discuss ideas with nonprofits as to how we could partner with them, either increasing their client base based on their current funding sources, or to set aside set number for students and parents to when they're selecting their services. For example, there's 20 slots with CITC's youth job placement program or professional skills development. Set aside 5. Those are the ideas that we're currently talking with, and how they use those funds too, either for in-kind donations for us paying for their services, or using them as a match, or taking those extra funds and increasing their client enrollment numbers, if that makes sense. So we're really reaching out now to these nonprofits as well, like CITC, the Boys and Girls Club, the Big Brothers Big Sisters. So these are, it's odd because I tasked our liaison to search for profit services here in Anchorage, and even herself in trying to think of profit services for students. was hard for her to grasp because her employment has been her tenure of employment has been in the nonprofit sector. And so it was kind of hard for her as well to kind of search for profit services that would benefit students. Hope that makes sense.
So it sounds like you're working with nonprofits. And the difficult part about that is just finding a fee for the nonprofit, right? Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think there's some like registration fees that could be paid through them and things like that. But that is tricky when the services are offered. You know, you have to make sure you're not supplementing or supplant. So if there are things that are already free and available to the students you're serving, you would have to think of, you know, be creative and think outside of the box on what you can offer that they're not, that would, you know, have a fee associated with it.
Yeah, and I think it also brings up a good point that, you know, for our students and families, and even as you spoke about with staff, often folks don't know what they don't know. And so it's really easy to say, well, my child has been in tutoring before and tutoring helped them, so I would like more tutoring. Or they had a big brother through big brothers, big sisters with an older sibling, so I would want that for a younger sibling. So these things that we've already been exposed to, either with, you know, themselves or with family members or friends, but it's hard to know those other services or other service providers that we've never been exposed to. And so that's where I think, you know, we can really come in and do some brainstorming on the programmatic side about all of those resources and services that might be available that our students and families just had never thought of, but that once they're offered that as an option, they may find great benefit in. But so it's kind of that mixture of those things that we know have worked and that we know are already kind of tried and true in our communities, as well as, you know, what are those new things that maybe just have not ever been available before, but could be really great if we brought it in brand new, or bringing back something that hasn't been done in forever.
If I may say something, you know, we started with some providers that we had relationships with previously, but, you know, as our scope of students that we were servicing broadened geographically, we, you know, Sylvan is, you know, there's franchises all over the country. So we've identified some of those, and, you know, like Club Z, Schooly. We have one that we really like is a Special Education Resource, LLC. Some of these are strictly virtual. Some of them are both. We knew that as time, you know, progressed and the pandemic abated, we would need more brick and mortar locations. So that was a consideration. And we know this is organic. We know that we will be adding as students say, you know what, it'd be great if this was closer to where I live. And so we will search out providers that are located nearby and strike up a conversation with them and come to an agreement so we can provide services and make it more accessible for the students and the families. So we know that we will be adding providers as we go, as the students and families request them. So
yeah. Oh, and that's a wonderful point. You know, the providers that you're offering right this moment are not the providers you're stuck with for 5 years. You know, this is meant to be a work in progress at all times so that you're meeting those evolving needs of your students and families. Anybody else been able to identify any great providers to share? Anybody looking for a great provider for a particular service? You're like, I really want to offer this service, but I have not been able to find a provider for it.
I have a quick question on qualifications for being a provider?
Yeah.
And I hope this question isn't way overdue. Well, I'm sure it is, but there are lots of services in our area that are provided by individuals, right? Like there might be one individual who teaches a workshop on shawl making or something, for example. So what qualifications would an individual have to meet to be considered a service provider for this grant?
So as far as from the department perspective, there are not specific qualifications that your shawl maker would have to meet to be considered an official shawl making service provider. What you would need though is on your end to come up with whatever qualifications you feel are appropriate. And sometimes those are already set by your organization. You know, you may have some things in place through your budget office where people have a certain process they have to go through, where if they're an individual, maybe they have to become a sole source provider, that type of thing. So any qualifications that you've come up with, either within your grant proposal or within your organization, you would need to follow those just to make sure that you are getting quality services. But as far as from the department end, there's not certain qualifications they would have to meet, particularly for those things that are, you know, like cultural crafts and things like that, where you're definitely not going to have a real set list of qualifications.
Okay,
Okay, I
thank
have
you.
a question to go along with that. So with these individuals, a lot of times you are selecting or you're looking for tribal elders in order to offer these services. I have a question regarding, can we do a condensed version rather than doing a real lengthy service provider agreement? Because I don't want that to be overwhelming and to where an elder would prefer not to participate if they're having to sign and go over this really long agreement. Can we do a condensed and maybe do an MOU? Because I know in the past, elders oftentimes they'll even volunteer their time and not accept any payment just because they want to help tribal students. And so maybe the only expense will be the supplies that they're having to purchase to come in and offer the activity. So I just wanted to see if there was a condensed, if we could do just an MOU agreement that's very small.
Yeah, so when you look at the service provider agreement, remember, you know, you can call that a contract, you can call it an MOU, but there in the notes on the template that was provided, it denotes which parts are required by the department. So there are some parts that are kind of considered best practice that are in the template, and then there are parts that are the required parts. So, you know, if you were coming up with a condensed version, the important thing would be that those required parts would have to still remain.
Also, if someone's volunteering and, you know, like an elder's volunteering, I also can see like their service included a part of your service provider agreement. So if you as the grantee have a service that you're providing and maybe you're doing like cultural nights and something, so, you know, people are volunteering for that. So that, you know, contract would be with you, and then however you deal with volunteers for your tribe or organization would be, you know, your standard way of doing it. So if you, you know, have that service through your service, basically, then I can see that fine too, if that works for elders. You know, they probably don't want to have an independent contract, or, you know, if they're not on payroll or doing things like that and they're just volunteering, then, you know, I wouldn't force them to do that. I would just, you know, have that service, that volunteering activity included into my service that I'm providing as a grantee. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Then you get to do the long haul.
Got it.
Any other questions, service provider questions or service providers to share? All right, so I'm going to hop over to our next topic then. No, we can always hop back and forth. So, but I did want to just give a little reminder and a little time for any questions we might have about those implementation pieces, because we are nearing the time when there's going to be a pretty good group of you moving from planning to implementation as we head into the start of the school year, and then again at the end of the grant year. So remember that prior to starting your implementation, you need to email Bianca these 4 items. So a description of your service selection process, so how students and families are going to be selecting their services and sign up for those. A description of your operational parent involvement and feedback process. So how are you going to be soliciting that feedback throughout the year? How are you going to take in the suggestions as well as get the satisfaction information from them? And then a sample of your written agreement. So whether, like I said, whether you're calling it a contract, whether you're calling it an MOU, whatever that service provider agreement is, you'll need to provide a sample of that to Bianca, as well as a list of everybody that you have a signed written agreement with. So everybody who's going to be your initial set of service providers. And then the final 4th one is a description of the process that will be used to choose students in the event that the demand for services exceeds the available capacity. So if you have more kids wanting to sign up for your services than you're able to currently serve, how will you select who gets served and who does not? So what's that process look like? Those are submitted via email to Bianca, and not the day that you're starting implementation, not one day before you're starting implementation. She needs time to actually review those and approve them for you. So just as you're thinking about that, think about, I'm starting implementation on this date, and then back it up so that you have time to get those into Bianca and get that approval. And remembering, like I said, that if you're in that group that's starting with the start of the school year, or you're in that group that's going to start October 1, it's a group. It's not just 1 or 2 of you that are starting then, which means she's going to be getting a lot of these implementation pieces at the same time. So don't wait till the last minute. I would really encourage, if you've got these things together, go ahead and send them in. Even if you're not starting till October 1, if you're going to have all of this stuff together and planned out by August, send it in to her and go ahead and get that done. Then it's off your plate, it's off her plate, and you can just be ready to implement October 1st. Any questions about the implementation pieces? Feeling pretty good on those? You know what you need to do? All right. Then I do have one poll here. And this is, again, just some sharing between the grantees, because I know there's been a lot of interest. So really quick and easy poll too. Are you currently implementing? So either yes, you're currently implementing services with students. No, but you're going to start before the end of the grant year. So your implementation starts prior to September 31, or no, you start October 1, and that's when you'll start your services with students. So I know there's always a lot of interest about who's doing this and who's doing that. All right, I've got almost everybody in. I've got at least one person who's still mulling over their response. They're like, we'll see. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close it and share that with you so you can see, just so you get an idea. So of the grantees on the call today, half of you are not starting until October 1. And then about 36% are going to start by the end of the school year. And 2 of you are currently implementing. You're already offering services to students. So just so you have kind of an idea there of where your fellow grantees are. And that also gives you an idea, so you can kind of see general percentages of how many grantees are going to be sending stuff in, knowing that not all 40 of you are on today. All right, so we're going to move to our ongoing topic, everybody's favorite, ACE budgets. So be thinking about your budget questions. I do have one thing to share before I'll get into your budget questions, which is what I like to call the yay list. So these are the folks who have an approved ACE budget in place. So you can give them a nice round of applause, a big yay. You can use your reaction buttons to celebrate. If you are not on this list, either A, you just sent in your budget this morning, it hasn't been reviewed yet, and you're expecting great results, or B, you're still working on your budget revision. If you have questions, if you need help with your budget revision, reach out. The TA team, we can meet with you. We've met with many grantees and helped walk through how that works. You can reach out to Bianca. We're all here to help you, but you've got to get your budgets in. It's July, the year is almost over. You need to have an approved budget in place. So it's really, really important to get those budgets in and get them approved as soon as humanly possible. So if you're struggling with that, don't worry. Clearly you're not alone, but reach out for that help. Let us help you get that budget in so that you can move on to other things that you need to do to actually provide services to kids. And then I'm going to take budget questions, but I wanted to point out, Zach put over in the chat box, he said they're starting services October 1st, and they're happy to collaborate with any of you and talk through questions and network. It's always great to network with your peers. You're in different communities and maybe offering slightly different services, but you're doing similar things, and it's great to have those folks that you can reach out to in the other programs. So any budget questions?
Also, before you reach out to me, there's probably one or two more that should be added to this list. I just did not update this list in time enough for Sarah. So sorry for my apologies. But yeah, so there's probably one or two more on this list. So, you know, if you have an approved budget, you definitely would have received a email from me saying that it's approved and uploaded in G5. If not, then it probably still needs work, or sent something or haven't got into it. But if you have sent in a budget and you're waiting for any information on me and it's been over a month, you definitely can reach out. I apologize if it's on my end and I haven't gotten to it.
And for those people who are wondering, well, am I that one? Am I the one that's missing from the list? I will send out the recording tomorrow, and when I do, I will send the updated list that will include those one or two additions to the yay list. So don't worry, I'll update that and send it out to you tomorrow. I don't want anyone to miss their yay. Any budget questions?
Yeah.
And we'll cover this at the end of the time, but since we're talking about it right now, I'm going to pop the email for the TA team in the chat box as well, so that if you want to schedule some time to walk through your budget, just reach out and we can absolutely do that.
I have a budget question. We live in a very rural area. Well, where our participants especially live in an even more rural area. So the cell phone service is very spotty. Would it be possible to get our parent liaison or to pay for a cell phone from the service provider located in that area? The reservation has a service provider. So would it be allowable to get the parent liaison a cell phone for them to be able to do their job? You know what I mean? They'll be in touch with parents and need that reception to be able to communicate.
Yeah, that sounds like a necessary project cost. So I don't know how you have it in your budget, but if you know they're contracted, that can definitely be included in their contract costs, like a total, or if it's your person that you're hiring, then it could be an other cost, I guess. Doesn't seem like supplies, but yeah, it seems necessary for your situation.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure how to describe it, but thank you. It sounds like we can make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and John brings up a good point. If it's for the parent liaisons that are being paid under your project costs because they're not providing direct services necessarily to the students, they're doing that other piece, then make sure that that's in that 20% there.
Yes.
Other budget questions? I know y'all yearn for the talking stick that I do not have a slide for budgets in here. It will happen. All right, well, if you think of, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say overall, you know, I think like the revised budgets are starting to come in. I think, you know, a lot of people, if there's any confusion, just making that relation to that per cost amount on your first page, especially if you are hiring them for personnel, like I want to see that definitely connected. And just, you know, sometimes it's more explanation that's needed. So if, you know, you have more information provided, so I don't have to go back to some things. But yeah, I think, you know, everyone's getting the gist of the 80% and that 20%, that 80% needs to be direct services and needs to be tied to something that is being selected by the students. And, you know, I know it has been a struggle. I don't know if anyone who has figured out ways to help that 20%. I know some grantees have been doing like cost sharing. And, you know, I know it has been difficult, probably more on those rural tribes, just because, you know, you have a lot of area probably to cover, and you need to have more interpersonal relationships, and this kind of grant doesn't really help with that situation. So I know, you know, if anyone has advice on that, it's probably more helpful because you guys are in the field and actually, you know, figuring out versus everyone here who's just like, you know, pushing it out instead of actually doing the work. So I know that has been probably the most challenging thing about ACE, and I'm always advocating for ACE, that this has been super hard and we're trying really hard to make sure we're meeting the many program requirements that ACE has. But I definitely think this budget requirement of 80-20 has been the most difficult, to say the least.
Yeah. But I think that's where, you know, if you are struggling with that, reach out so we can help. You know, we're talking with lots of grantees every day and seeing lots of ways that folks are, you know, not necessarily getting around it, but working with it,
making it work
the best way possible. So, you know, sometimes it's just helpful to have another sounding board, another person to brainstorm with.
I have a question. You know, it's related to budgets. It's dealing mainly with contracts. You know, you know, in our discussions, previous discussions leading up to our budget approval, we talked about how we treated people who were already on staff versus, you know, contract staff. And so we tried to make it where we said, okay, these are the services that our existing staff would be provided, and that's how we justify their compensation. As far as contracts, we've established a contract with our department and the tribe to provide services, and the members of our department are providing those services. My question is that enough, or do we need to have an individual contract with each staff person? It's a thought that just occurred to me. I mean, you've already hired them, and they have a scope of work. Of course, the scope is somewhat changed with the new ACE grant, but they are still providing services, and that's what they do. It's not administrative. It's the planning and the execution and the providing of the services directly to the students. So what are your thoughts on that?
It sounds like it would just be like with the entity. So like the same thing if, you know, it was the Boys and Girls Club that was the service provider, you wouldn't have a service provider with each instructor at the Boys and Girls Club. You would just have a service provider with the Boys and Girls Club and the services that's going to be provided, you know. So I wouldn't, think of it, your tribal entity, as any different than, a business entity. So
Cool. Because Sarah had to help me with a simple answer that I had to give him to my TA, and so I appreciate
simple.
that, simple. And so I had to go show it to him, and he kind of okay, we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen a fiscal person yet who does like a happy dance about the budget restrictions.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, the way I like to think about it is you're going to do a service provider agreement with each either entity or person that you're going to make direct payment to. And so you as the grant aren't making direct payment to each of those staff people. You're just paying the tribe, and then the tribe's paying all those people.
Right.
So you just need that one service provider agreement. So think of it that way, as, who are you paying direct payment to? And that's who you contract with.
I had a question, kind of what you guys just talking about. So in the community, there's some people that specialize like in making skirts, moccasins, and different things like that. So we can do a service provider with one person that specializes in that to provide those services for our kids.
Yeah, so they would have like an independent contract if, they're receiving the direct funds, versus if they were like, maybe the tribe hires them and they work in the cultural department, then you'll pay the tribe to pay them a salary. So yeah, you definitely can have, contracts with
our
entity or individual.
Our department actually has a contract with the language and culture department. So
yeah. And either one's fine. Like John, you were saying, if you're contracting with the language and culture department, that's fine. Or Sandy, like you're describing, if you're just contracting with the lady down the street who is going to teach this course, you can contract just with her. Either one is allowable.
Okay, thank you.
Any other budget questions? Okay, so as we head into our last little bit here, I wanted to talk about, are there any particular challenges that any of you are encountering? Or is there anything that we can do from the department, from the TA team, to provide more assistance in certain areas? So one idea we've already gotten is it would be helpful to have a template maybe for an MOU that you can use with school districts, in particular around data sharing. And this might be, tools, maybe you'd like additional resources in a certain area. You'd like time in a future talking stick to explore certain things, whatever might be useful. This is kind of your time to share out those challenges and what we could do to help you.
Sarah, I know we met about how to appropriately assess different grade levels and things like that.
Yeah.
And then also, I think, sharing that with the group would be awesome, because it kind of really set me or gave me good perspective and a good direction to go, but also how to use that data to accurately report on the final reporting or annual reporting report. So I think that would be a good resource for the future.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, we can definitely talk some more about, assessing and using that data and putting all that into your lovely APRs to make really nice APRs that everyone enjoys reading and learns from.
I want to thank you all for providing as far as the template for the service provider agreement. I had mentioned something to Bianca during our session. One of the challenges that I am running into is that each one of our service agreements, we are adapting the language to make it fit the actual provider. So if it's for something that's cultural related, ACT related, or the elective course, and one of the challenges that I've noticed is that if we are paying any individual, whether it's called a service agreement or a contract, I'm having to submit each one of these through our legal department. So a challenge there has been is it's a very lengthy process to
Yeah.
get these through, because one of the things that Bianca had mentioned was, even our list of service providers, there are things that are still in review with legal. And now, I can provide a list of those that we anticipate agreements with, but as far as having the official signatures, that is just noticing running into some roadblocks there.
Yeah, Kelly, I think that's something that is definitely shared by a number of grantees as far as some lengthy approval processes, whether that's specifically with contracts or for some folks it's been with some of their budget pieces. So yeah, definitely can be a challenge that adds even more length to your process. And John was sharing that they were having to do the same thing, but it helped once legal saw that there was a pattern, that at least, there was some similarities.
Yeah, I should have put in the GAN when you guys were all awarded. Congratulations. This will not be easy, but it will be worth it, and I feel for I want to be yeah, let's do it. On so many of your guys's things. And, I'm always supportive of everything, all the great work that you guys are doing. And it's just oh, we can't do this with ACE. We can't do this with ACE, so it has so many challenges and difficulties, but ultimately, hearing from some of the grantees and how it is expanding some of the opportunities for students, I do think that this is, something worth, putting in the work for. And just hopefully it gets a little more streamlined and more flexible in the future if it is ever ran again. But yeah, I think, having this be the first grant of this nature, and it's super challenging, and I wish I had more advice, and I'm just yeah, it sucks, but I don't know. Hopefully the grantees on the line can help you or have some more advice. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of hurdles when it comes to ACE, for sure.
Well, and the two who have already moved into implementation may be able to vouch that once you get all the pieces planned and your budget approved, and you get to move into that implementation part, it does get easier. Most of you are in the most challenging part right now, where you're trying to get that budget approved, you're trying to get all your planning pieces together, but it will calm. I'm not going to say calm, because there'll definitely be lots going on once you're implementing, but it will get easier. And then you start seeing the payoff, which I think helps as well. You see all the students engaged in their services and the difference it's making. So you're getting close. Even if you're not at implementation yet, it is coming near.
Yeah, and then for those there, I know there's at least 2 new directors on the line right now, and I'm happy that you guys are on the line. So you see that all of us are pretty much in the same boat. We have a couple months in front of us, but we're all trying to figure it out. But we're in it together, and I think that once it really gets rolling, it's going to be a good thing. So I'm just thankful that, we got that planning period to kind of plan and get things together. And we have great TA, and, I definitely could not do it without Synergy and Sarah. I know she has been great help with all of this, and, really there for everyone. And now things are, kind of getting more better on this end as well too. So I'm hoping that things will be a faster turnaround and more communication from my end as well.
Well, if you have further questions, we will have a little more time for questions, but I want to share a couple of pieces with you, because I know some of you will have to hop right as we hit the top of the hour. So one, just a reminder that we do still have the Padlet going. We do still have people contributing there. That's a great place that, if you get off the call and then you're like, oh, I wanted to share my way that I'm doing service selection, or I wanted to share my service providers, or I want to get those ideas. That's where all of that is being housed, and people are doing great sharing there. So feel free to jump over there. The next thing I want to share with you, and I'll give you the link to that as well, is that we have a new training coming up. Now you'll see you did not receive a calendar invite for this because you do have to pre-register because we have very limited space for this one. So it is just being offered for project directors at this time. If you're a project coordinator and like Bianca was talking about, your project director is someone who mainly signs off on things and you're really that project leader, feel free to reach out and I can work some exceptions for you. But in general, it's being offered for project directors. It's going to be August 4th, which is a Wednesday from 2 to 5 Eastern. And it's called True Colors. Some of you may have done this before. For others, it may be new. You'll see it's a workshop that will actually provide some information both about yourself as well as your peers and the teams that you work with in your projects, about how to work together more effectively, communicate more effectively, lots of different things. Register now if you're interested. So the reason I say this is because, like I said, we are limiting it. So there is not enough space for every single project director to participate. So if this is something that you want to participate in, I really encourage you to register as soon as possible so you can lock in your spot. And because we'll be sending out some information in advance. So you'll want to make sure and get all of that pre-information as well before you head into the actual workshop session. And it's going to be very interactive, lots going on. So I'll put that link into the chat momentarily so that you can get that too. While I'm putting that in the chat, I'm going to let Bianca share a little bit about the grantee satisfaction survey that went out to all the project directors and authorized representatives.
Yeah. Well, real quick, I just want to say the True Colors is really awesome. I actually did it before. And it really is like, you know, telling about yourself and how you handle work and what type of environment you are best comfortable in, and, you know, kind of how to work with those coworkers you don't get along with. So it is super helpful. So yeah, I definitely encourage you to attend that. And for the survey, there has been a survey. They are sending it out weekly to the project directors. I know there has been some updates as project director. So if you have not been sending it, you definitely can email me and I can try to update your project. They're using a director list from the beginning of the year. So there has been changes to that project director since like February of this year, that you might not have got it. I've been, you know, sending you the information and ways to complete that. But, you know, if you're not getting it and you haven't seen it after checking your junk box and spam mail, let me know and I will, you know, send you the steps to complete that and to update your name on their listserv, the education's listserv. So yeah, take it. It's, you know, for your satisfaction, how well, you know, we're doing with your technical assistance. If you're enjoying these talking stick sessions, you know, this is including anything that's Synergy and Sarah's been providing, as well as myself. Since you've been awarded in October. So hopefully we're doing better than before. I still feel like I can always do better. I kind of finally feel like I'm back to like my flow of things too. You know, I love hearing from the grantees and having the one-on-one calls. So now it's like, oh, I can finally, you know, schedule a month or two to really catch up with everyone one-on-one. So that's been super helpful. And there's my 3-year-old. So I hope, you know, you guys are all enjoying the technical assistance that we're providing. And if there's any way we can do better or, you know, different technology or techniques to reach you, please let us know because we'll try.
And then the final piece here is just a reminder, we do have our office hours at the end of the month. We do this the last Thursday of every month, and it is just an open come and go. It's open to all OIE grantees. So whether you're coming to ask questions about your ACE grant, your NULL grant, your NYCP, whatever grant you have, you're welcome to attend. It is come and go within the hour. So you can also pop in if, you know, that toward the end of the hour if you have a conflict. And it's just a time to be able to ask questions. It's not something that's mandatory. It's just an option for everybody each month. before it gets away from me. There's the link over in the chat box. So you can always add that to your calendar if that's something that you're interested in. It's a great time because it kind of comes midway between the talking sticks. So it's a great time to be able to get some FaceTime questions answered, as well as remember that you can always reach out at any point to ask questions in between. I am going to pop up our end of event poll again for those who I know need to hop in just a few minutes. So we'll get that up. And then I'll also pop up all of our contact info. So like I said, you know, if you have questions, whether it's regarding budget or program implementation requirements, services, anything like that, please feel free to reach out to us. But as Bianca was pointing out, it really helps if you include who your grantee is and your PR number. You know, some of you have multiple grants, so it's really helpful so that we know exactly which grant you're referring to and can give you the best answer possible. So as we wrap up today, does anybody have any final questions? And remember, I'll send out a little update tomorrow so that you can see if you're the final 1 or 2 on the yay list. And it'll also have all these links so that you can see the office hours, the sign up for True Colors, and for the Padlet. All right. Well, if you don't have any final questions, we will see you next time. We will stay on for a few minutes. So if you do have any, know that we'll still be here. But have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you soon.